Thank you so much. Our text for today is taken from the Old Testament book of Habakkuk. That's a guy with all the K's in his name. We don't spend a lot of time in the book of Habakkuk, in all honesty, but we're going to spend our time today, and we're going to read verses 2 through 5 of chapter 1. Habakkuk chapter 1, beginning with verse 2. Habakkuk says, O Lord, how long shall I cry, and you will not hear? Even cry out to you violence, and you will not save. Why do you show me iniquity and cause me to see trouble? For plundering and violence are before me. There is strife and contention arises. Therefore the law is powerless, and justice never goes forth. For the wicked surround the righteous. Therefore perverse judgment proceeds. And then beginning in verse 5, the Lord answers him. He says, Look among the nations and watch. Be utterly astounded, for I will work a work in your days which you would not believe, though it were told you. And may God bless the reading of his word today. I came across an article recently entitled, Ceiling Fan Faith. You ever heard faith described that way? I never had, so I had to read the article. And it was a humorous story by a lady describing her cleaning the ceiling fans in her home. Now everything was going along just fine and dandy. And she's in the back end of the house in the far back bedroom cleaning the last fan, standing up on the ladder. At the other end of her house, her husband arrives home. He walks in and it feels a little hot to him, a little stuffy. And he notices all the ceiling fans in the house that he can see are off. So he reaches over, and they've got their switch design where one switch turns on every ceiling fan. And so he reaches over and flips the switch on. And in the far back bedroom, the lady on the ladder, she gets her hair caught in the ceiling fan. And she's going round and round and round, holding on for dear life, screaming bloody murder, and calling her husband some names you will not find in the Bible. Well, as she finished describing the aftermath of that event, she did survive, and he barely survived. She made this point. Your faith gets tested when you get caught in a ceiling fan. Your faith gets tested when life grabs you by the hair, spins you around, and will not let go. Your faith gets tested when trials, troubles, and tribulations hit. A very serious lesson from her funny ceiling fan experience. Well, in our text for today, we find the Old Testament prophet named Habakkuk caught in his ceiling fan. Yeah, they had ceiling fans back then. We've always had ceiling fans. Read Genesis chapter 3. The Garden of Eden had a ceiling fan in it. So there's always been ceiling fans. And Habakkuk is caught in one. So let's check it out for a few moments. Why? Because every one of us has been, or is now, or will be later, caught in one of life's ceiling fans. First of all, we want to look at Habakkuk's complaint. In verse 3, he looks at his land and he sees iniquity. Look at how he describes it in the third verse. He uses words like trouble, plundering, violence, strife, and contention. Add those words up and you get iniquity. And then in verse 4, he notes his land's injustice. What was his land doing with all that iniquity? Well, he tells us in verse 4. He says, the law is powerless. Justice never goes forth. The wicked surround the righteous. Perverse judgment proceeds. His country wasn't doing anything about all the iniquity. Habakkuk was overwhelmed at the crime and corruption in his land. His head was spinning from the breakdown of law and order in his land. He was heartbroken at the collapse of morality and integrity among his people. He's caught in his ceiling fan. And because he is, in verse 2, he complains to God. How long will you let this go on? God, why don't you do something about my ceiling fan? Do something about this iniquity and this injustice. God, you can stop it. You can flip the switch. Why don't you, God? Stop my ceiling fan. You ever feel this way? Now, you don't have to raise your hand. You don't have to smile. You don't have to nod. We've all been there. We've all done that. And we've all got the t-shirt to prove it. For when we get caught in a ceiling fan in life, what do? We lodge a complaint to God about our ceiling fan. Okay, this brings us to God's comeback. His comeback to Habakkuk's complaint. His answer. It's found in verses 5 through 11. In verse 5, he tells Habakkuk that he is going to do an astounding work that Habakkuk will find hard to believe. Now, doesn't that sound good? Doesn't that sound great? That sounds promising, doesn't it? It sounds like God is getting ready to stop Habakkuk's ceiling fan. It sounds like he's getting ready to stop all that iniquity and injustice. Sounds like God's getting ready to clear and clean up all the problems. But if you go on and read verses 6 through 11, God tells Habakkuk what this astounding work is going to be. And it is the shock of Habakkuk's life. He tells Habakkuk, I am going to use the Babylonians to punish my people. I am going to allow the Babylonians to invade, conquer, and capture my people. I'm going to use those hated heathens and those perverted pagans to punish my people. In other words, God tells Habakkuk, son, you ain't seen nothing yet. My child, your ceiling fan is about to get faster. Lad, things are going to go from bad to worse. Child, you're about to lose more of your hair than you've already lost. Habakkuk, things are going to get a lot worse than they now are. This was shocking, startling, stunning, and striking to Habakkuk. This plan of God. So, this leads us to our next point, Habakkuk's confusion. His confusion is voiced in verses 12 through 17. For the life of him, he can't figure out and understand why God is using the Babylonians. Now, as we've already seen, Habakkuk knows that the people are guilty. He knows they need to be punished. But the Babylonians? Those animals on two legs? Those people who are more beast than human? Those monsters, those demons from hell? God, they're far worse than we are. And yet you're going to use them to punish us? Lord, I don't get it. I'm confused. This makes no sense. This doesn't add up. This doesn't compute. Lord, I don't understand what you're doing. Lord, I don't like what you're doing. Lord, I don't agree with what you're doing. Ever feel this way? Again, you don't have to raise your hand, nod, or smile. We've all been there and done that. We've all been confused by actions of the Lord. We all have been in places where what the Lord was doing we didn't like. We didn't agree with. So now this brings us to God's command. How does God respond to Habakkuk's confusion? Does God say, "Oh, Habakkuk, I'm so sorry I've confused you. I'm so sorry. I hope I haven't offended you, Habakkuk. Tell you what, Habakkuk, let's me and you have a cup of coffee and we'll sit down and discuss and debate it and we'll take a vote. And I might change my mind." Does God do that? No. God is God. God doesn't work that way. What he did, he gave Habakkuk a command. It's found over in chapter 2, verse 4. And it is a verse you have heard me quote to you, I don't know how many times in the 11 years I've been here. But this is where it's at. The just shall live by faith. That's what he told Habakkuk to do. Habakkuk, when the Babylonians come, you continue to live by your faith in me. When the Babylonians come and they start their robbing and their raping and their murdering and they start hauling people off in chains as slaves, you continue to live by your faith in me. Habakkuk, when your ceiling fan keeps spinning faster and faster, when it's pulling your last hair out, you continue to live by your faith in me. That's God's demand and command for Habakkuk. And folks, when we're caught in the ceiling fan, his command is the same. When our ceiling fan keeps spinning faster and faster, and when it's pulling all of our hair out, we don't live by feeling or by fun. We live by faith in him. When things go from bad to worse, we don't live by our fortune or fame. We live by our faith in him. When things go from bad to worse, we don't live by fairness because life is not fair. We don't live by force. No, we live by faith in him. When things go from bad to worse, sometimes we don't even live by family or friends, because sometimes our family and friends are the one that put us in the ceiling fan. No, we live by faith in him. Faith in him. And why is this God's command? Why is this his way, his plan? For after all, he could hit the switch, couldn't he? Now, God doesn't start our ceiling fans. He doesn't cause them, but he could stop them. He could hit the switch at any moment. So why doesn't he? Here's the answer, friends. It doesn't take any faith to live when the ceiling fan is stopped. When we don't have any problems or troubles. Life is okie-dokie and hunky-dory. It doesn't take faith in him to live at those times. But when we're caught in a ceiling fan, it takes faith to live in him. And one thing I've learned from studying this book for the last 40 years, God wants more than anything else from his people. Faith. Faith. He commands it. He demands it. And he deserves it. He deserves it. Therefore, people who truly trust in him and live by him, they will continue to live by their faith in him when the ceiling fan keeps going. While those who don't truly trust in Him and live by their faith in Him, they'll forsake their faith when the ceiling fan keeps going. This, my friends, is ceiling fan faith. It's faith in Him no matter what. It's faith in Him no matter if things get better, if they stay the same, or if they get worse. It's faith in Him no matter if we're caught in the fan or if we're not caught in the fan. Ceiling fan faith is faith in Him no matter the matter. And so the question is, do you have ceiling fan faith? Do I have ceiling fan faith? Do we as a church have a ceiling fan faith? Do we? We need to. We need to. God help each of us. God help all of us to have a ceiling fan faith.